So I'm sure all of you know by now that No Game No Life is my least favorite anime of all time. This is the case for many reasons, but today I'm going to put my hatred aside and review this anime with as little bias as possible. This, for some reason, is one of the most popular and loved anime to come out in recent years. With the movie just recently being confirmed and the retweet goal I set on my Twitter being reached, I figured it was time to revamp my review on this anime. So, without further ado, let's get into my review of No Game No Life. So the story of No Game No Life goes like this. No Game No Life follows Sora and Shiro, shut-in neat siblings in the online gamer duo behind the legendary username Blank. They view the real world as just another lousy game. However, a strange email challenging them to a chess match changes everything. The brother and sister are plunged into an otherworldly realm where they meet Tet, the god of games. The mysterious god welcomes Sora and Shiro to Disboard, a world where all forms of conflict, from petty squabbles to the fate of the whole countries, are settled not through war, but by way of high-stake games. This system works thanks to a fundamental rule wherein each party must wager something they deem to be of equal value to the other party's wager. In this strange land where the very idea of humanity is reduced to child's play, the indifferent genius gamer duo of Sora and Shiro have finally found a real reason to keep playing games. To unite the 16 races of Disboard, defeat Tet, and become the gods of this new gaming is everything world. Now I feel the real appeal of this anime is in its self-insertive nature. Similar to Sword Art Online, watchers of this anime place themselves into the shoes of the main characters, because who doesn't want to live in this world? Given the show's audience, everything about the show is a gamer's paradise, a world where everything is settled by games, being so great at these games to become the ruler of a kingdom, etc., and that is where the show truly shines, in building this world. The premise is very nice and also draws viewers in by being a game anime, but with a fresh twist within the genre. Instead of being a video game world with classes and RPG elements, this show chooses to focus on interesting strategic type of games like chess. Also, the characters don't want to leave this world but rather take over and become gods. But the show itself introduces many flaws with the core concept of its world, the games. The fact that the whole fate of the world could be left to a game of chance or luck as opposed to skill, or that I could lose everything all because I lost a coin flip. But this show does do a very nice job by explaining that a game of chance could be won before the game even starts, and it was actually interesting to hear how a game of chance can actually boil down to strategy. Although very far-fetched, it was interesting. No Game No Life sets guidelines from the very beginning that there are 10 rules to be followed as these games are played, but this introduces one of the biggest flaws in the story: cheating. The rules state that cheaters will be disqualified immediately, but one thing that really doesn't sit well with me, especially given this rule, is that the games of this show are seemingly determined by who can cheat the best without getting caught. Cheaters are rarely caught in this anime, and it was one of the many problems with this show. Another negative thing about this show is the games themselves. Aside from being one big cheating contest, I found them all to rely excessively on table turns. Now this is fine and dandy for the first couple times, but as many times as it happens, it really becomes obsessive. But the biggest problem with the games is the fact that the show repeatedly shows in your face that Sora and Shiro can never lose. Every climactic moment automatically becomes irrelevant once you remember the phrase said multiple times throughout the show: Blank never loses. The constant reminder that our protagonists are undefeatable makes the games themselves fall flat and all tension feel lost. The thought is always in the back of your mind that somehow, someway, they're going to pull something out of their butt to come out on top. The only saving grace is the fact that sometimes it is interesting to see, even though you know they're going to win, the thought process behind how they win, and this can occasionally be a saving grace. The show also sports a large number of major plot holes I won't get into for spoiler and time reasons, so let's just say there are tons. Lastly, this anime's biggest flaw is its ending, if you can call it that. The ending for No Game No Life leaves off with tons of unanswered questions, only 2 of the 16 races explored or even introduced, and the worst read the source material ending I've ever experienced. Now granted, this show is getting a movie, but the movie isn't even a sequel, so this type of ending is inexcusable as a watcher and is the worst ending I've seen in anime. Also, this is an ecchi show and they lay it on thick. I can't take off points for the ecchi as much as I dislike it because this review will be as unbiased as possible. If you like ecchi, more power to you. If you don't, like me, you're gonna have a bad time. For the story, No Game No Life has a very interesting premise and a genre filled with the same old, but the show has many flaws that overshadow what the show actually does well. The games themselves are interesting but lose all tension because the show keeps telling you Blank never loses. The show's rules are clearly determined from the beginning, but instead of being a test of skill or wits, the games become a cheating competition. Not to mention plot holes galore and an ending that leaves a ton of unanswered questions and leaves the viewer begging for more with no continuation in sight. All these things make the story of this show very weak. The characters for this show are probably the worst aspect of the show, with little to no backstory given, no depth, no reason to care for these characters in the slightest, and a few even being turned into nothing more than a fan service device for the watcher to get their rocks off to. I won't spend too much time talking about them because I can go on all day, so I'll give you a brief rundown. Sora and Shiro form the online persona Blank, an undefeatable gaming duo. Sora is extroverted and has no problems dealing with people. While not as intelligent as Shiro, he has shown to have a brilliant IQ. Rather than computing numbers like Shiro, Sora can rapidly compute what his opponents are going to do based on observing their behavior behavior and motivations. Shiro is described as a genius in logic and problems, but has difficulty understanding emotions or behavior, relying on Sora to help her defeat human opponents such as Tet in their chess match. She also rarely shows much emotion at all on her face and, despite her genius intellect, speaks in short sentences. The two of them were transported to this world with plans to take over and become gods. If only this duo was as good at being protagonists as they are in video games. The two really only serve as self-insertion characters, someone the watcher places themselves inside as the show unfolds, and they play this role very well with their video game skills, but as characters they lack any sort of depth of development. Any backstory? How did they meet? Why are they so good at games? Why doesn't Shiro wear a longer skirt so there aren't as many panty shots? She's 11 by the way. The show neglects to tell us all these things, especially the last one, and the main characters are incredibly empty because of it. Backstory for the two is only teased at but is never fully revealed before the show comes to a screeching halt. These characters suffer heavily from this and give me no reason whatsoever to be attached to them. Jibril is one of the worst characters in the show. Jibril is the youngest and strongest of the Flugel race, one of the only races explored upon in the show. She has little to no backstory and development and is really only there as a fan service object. No reason to care for her or be attached to her as a character whatsoever. Phil and Zell are by far the most interesting characters in the anime. Zell is a member of humanity and Phil is a member of the elf race. The two are given backstory as to what their lives were like before Sora and Shiro arrived, and are given a genuine reason for you to like them as characters. This is very sad to say considering they are only side characters and are not given enough screen time. The last and certainly least of the characters is Stephanie Dola. Stephanie Dola is nothing more than an objectified fan service device portrayed by the show to be a stupid intermediary character, even though she is shown to be smart in some instances. In shows like these, there are two ways to convey information during the games. The first is an inner monologue. Characters go over their strategy in their head and thus the audience is informed. The second is through an intermediary character, a person who the information is given to explain the events. No Game No Life uses the latter with Steph as the intermediary. The problem with this is, Steph is shown multiple times throughout the show to have the ability to comprehend what is happening, but the show when needed makes her seem dumb only to convey the information. At the drop of a hat, once the show needs to explain information about the games, she's right back to being dumb old Steph. What better way to portray women in anime than making them stupid intermediary characters whose only other purpose is to give the watcher a hard-on by dressing in scantily clad dog outfits. She's given very, and I mean very minimal backstory. It's there, but it's so little it becomes irrelevant and forgotten as the show progresses. The characters for No Game No Life are extremely weak and there are little to no standouts. Our main protagonists serve no purpose other than self-insertion characters, and female characters are reduced to a fan service device, and the only character with anything of any merit are two side characters with substantially less screen time. The cast for this show is sorry at best. Now one thing I've always credited this show for is its art. I want for really bright art styles, and this show really did it for me. Great use of red outlines, the game world is clearly separated from the real world in terms of artistic styling, animation looks great because it's a madhouse show and backgrounds are absolutely stunning. The art is the reason I watched this show in the first place and is a saving grace for it. The art amplifies the intensity of the games because lore knows it needs it, and without the show's exceptional art style I would not give this show a second glance. Props to Madhouse for a job well done. The sound is another saving grace for this show. While the OST itself is above average with some great tracks during the games, this show sports an amazing opening sung by Konami Suzuki. Despite this show being my least favorite show of all time, the opening does manage to crack my top openings list in relatively low spots. Also, the voice acting is very well done as well, namely Yoshitsugu Matsuoka as Sora. Overall, in terms of aesthetics, this is a great show, but in its story elements, games, and characters, it falls completely flat on its face. The story sports lots of interesting concepts it sets up for itself in the genre, but in the show's search to be the ultimate self-insertion show, the idea of undefeatable protagonists makes the games lose all tension. The show also sets up a variety of rules to keep itself in order, only for the games to be reduced to cheating contests. And the conclusion of the show being the worst conclusion possible with almost nothing accomplished in the grand scheme, 2 out of the 16 races being explored, and a cliffhanger read the light novel conclusion that does nothing but leave the viewer begging for more, with unanswered questions and unfulfilled wishes, with no sequel in sight. Literally the worst type of ending. The characters are abysmal, with our protagonists being nothing more than self-insertion devices, females being degraded in stupid fan service and intermediary devices, and the best characters being side characters with very little screen time. But the art helps the show and its many shortcomings by being individual and bright with great use of red outlines and amazing backgrounds to portray the game world of Disboard. The sound is great as well with a good OST, amazing opening, and good voice actors. This show is not one I recommend to my worst enemy, with all of its shortcomings being in areas that a show needs to be worth my time, but to each their own. I feel objectively this show is horrible, but in terms of enjoyment from the viewer, it has a ton of merit as a self-insertion wish fulfillment anime, and I believe that to be the reason why this show is as popular as it is. As for ultimate recommendations, the first show I have for you is Kaiji. The games in this show are innovative and fun, and unlike No Game No Life, they carry an amazing sense of tension. If you like the game aspect of No Game No Life, and you can get past the jarring character designs, Kaiji should be a great fit. Also, I recommend Problem Children coming from another world, aren't they? For being No Game No Life, but better. Not much to say there. So that wraps it up for this review, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of No Game No Life, and I hope you guys don't slaughter me in the comments. And if I just a disclaimer, I don't want to argue about this show in the comments. I'm not gonna debate this review whatsoever. I don't want to have any discussions, And if it comes to the point where all I'm getting is hate comments saying that this review is terrible because of that, then I'm just going to disable the comments altogether. And so watch out for that. No, my opinion is wrong or anything like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did. And new movie hype. And I'll see you guys next time. Later.